are. It's always lovely to be here early and then just experience everyone arriving. I can feel people coming from New York and the UK and China and Sweden, and I'm in Germany and Romania or Hungary. So, and if I left out your country, you are all part of this international community that we are creating together. Um, yeah, I don't have much to say this morning. I feel like I'm I'm on the edge of something, so I'm really glad that Lynn is going to be doing this topic this morning. I find that I don't know if it's because of the pandemic, but it seems like a lot of people are facing challenges, and sometimes it's hard to recognize what our own needs are, and we seem to be well, and even I do it when things don't go right to blame the other. So anyway, so I'm just in that space right now where I'm just sort of trying to silently observing what is happening. Just briefly, just to let you know that at Corona Plaza next Saturday, Kathy Rowan and team is offering a program called Fulfilling Our Blueprint, and it's befriending our creative potential that's buried in our golden shadow.
Oh,
So,
wow, my goodness.
so that's at 11 o'clock New York time next Saturday.
Again, who could not come to that?
So again, I just want to wish a warm welcome to everyone. And Lynn, it's yours.
I just wanted to hear the name of that presentation again.
And actually, it's Kathy Rowan comes quite often on Mondays to this program. It's fulfilling our blueprint, befriending our creative potential that is buried in our golden shadow.
Love that, the golden shadow. So, good morning, everybody. That I haven't presented this topic before because it's sort of my topic, but it occurs to me that the very heart of the philosophy and the practice that we get from Jean Genlin is this idea of the edge. And I was so inspired last week with Dan using the tools of TAE to help us to focus on diversity. I thought that it was such a graceful and I want to say easy, but not easy, way of getting into using TAE for a concept, going to the edge of an idea. And it also is an idea that's so important and so of the essence of where we are as a community, as a world right now. So I wanted to continue with this idea of the edge of awareness. The edge of awareness is the central idea of Jean's philosophy that is a game changer. It changes the conversation about psychotherapy, about growth, about what it is to be human, about what our possibilities are. And we know that concept so deeply when we know focusing, that we know how to go to this edge of what we can think, what we can know, what we can consider. And we know how to just stay there at that edge. We know how to quiet ourselves and re-embody ourselves so that the larger whole of us can be brought in right into that spot, to that place where the known and the unknown meet. where the explicit and the implicit meet. And we know that when we're overwhelmed, that we've gone too far over the edge. And when it's all conceptual and abstract, that we haven't gotten there to that edge. We can feel the edge there. The edge is the place where the horizon line of new beginnings, of new day. So I'm going to show you a chart that I use in my teaching that Paul Kahn helped and his wife helped to make this chart. And Christine is going to show it to us. And we're not going to spend a lot of time on the chart, but I just wanted to give you a visual image of how we can conceptualize this edge. You'll see here this line, the line that is the meeting place of the implicit and the explicit. In psychotherapy, the old paradigm was we thought about the conscious and the unconscious. And the unconscious was this deep place that we can't know anything about. And we needed the therapist or someone else to interpret in the unconscious. Gene's idea of the implicit, it's not his idea of the implicit, but all he talked about in terms of the implicit is not what we absolutely have no idea about, but it's the place that's between what we would call non-conscious and conscious, that we have a feel for, an inkling of. So you can look at that horizon line there of just what comes over the edge into the world of words. So the explicit, which we spend much of our conscious day with thinking and rationality and concepts and functioning and very clear emotions. And the implicit that's right under the surface. And that implicit is this larger realm at the edge of thinking that is a world of metaphor, image, body sense, deep memories. And at that edge is where these two worlds meet. The explicit world that sort of goes along in a line, it's linear, and the implicit world that dances about and pokes up, from under that line, and oh, it's like that realm. And growth and psychotherapy and all of our focusing and being with ourselves happens at this line, this horizon line that we're calling the edge. I think that's enough for this chart here. So when you see that chart, you can kind of recognize, oh yes, I know that edge where I go in my focusing, where I say, is there an image or a metaphor? And then something new can come. The edge is not a place of action or or pouring out what's there on our minds, or the edge is a tentative place. It's a place where we come and we sit for a moment. It could be a split second in the midst of a conversation, and we say, "Oh, what don't I know? What's new here? What's right behind or beneath or above this reality that I'm experiencing?" And we have to wait, as Jean says, for it to come. And something new comes there. So this morning, I want to talk about the relational edge. We can go to the edge of our awareness, of course, with our personal issues, with our life issues. And Dan was showing us how to do that with personal, political, conceptual issues. We can do it in our thinking. When we're trying to write something, we're doing it. It's also a place that we can go in our relational lives, our relationships with another person, our relationships, of course, with ourselves, our relationships with a group, our relationships with a movement. Say, I want to focus on my relationship with the Democratic Party or something like that. There's an edge there. Or I want to focus on my affiliation with an organization. I can go there, right to that edge where what I know and what I don't know meets. And then we find that what we don't know, some part of us knows so much more than what we think we don't know. And we need to be in contact with that larger self in order to know more of what we don't know. One of my students had once defined focusing as what we know that we don't know that we know, or something like that. Anyway, I get mixed up with how many don't know, but you get the point. It's like we don't know that we know that, but we have to sit right at that edge to know that we know that, and that knowing has to come, and it comes from this horizon, from this larger self. We haven't used focusing enough. This is my theme of my whole focusing life. We haven't used focusing enough to focus on the relational edge. I want to call it the intimate edge of experience. Now, if you're having trouble with somebody, or with a group, or with an organization, or with a movement, you may shudder. I don't want any intimate edge with them, right? An intimate edge doesn't have to be the feeling of snuggling up close. The intimate edge is the edge that touches you here, right? Focusing is where your in Yiddish, it's the kishkas. Your kishkas, I think you'll all know what kishkas are just by the sound of the word. Your kishkas are touched. And that intimate edge is the edge where something new can happen. In our relational lives, we all know the feeling of some vastness that we can't approach in a relationship. There's a force field around what we can say and what we can't say. I'll often say to my to psychotherapy classes, what were you not able to say to your therapist that would have been that you would be surprised was not able to be said? And it's a wonderful question. You could ask it to yourself, not only about your therapist, but about about your mother, about your friend, about your spouse. There are certain things that the relational field won't let us go there. And oh, of course I couldn't have said that. Sometimes they're really very simple things. Somebody said it really annoyed me when my therapist would be sort of tapping her fingers on the chair. And I could never say that for 15 years. It might be subjects that can't be brought up. All of us know the experience, the relational experience of falling into the same hole with somebody again and again and again. And there's something that prevents us from seeing what is that hole? You know, where does it begin? What happens there? We blindly fall in again and again. We all know the experience of a relationship that's important to us just going flat, being dead. And we just say, oh, they've always been like that. They have always been like that. Or there's no life there. And we don't think to go to that edge of what is it that makes it dead? Is dead the right word there? We all know the experience of something suddenly exploding and we're taken aback and terribly hurt. And we just want to get away, or we want to get back at the person, or we want to justify ourselves. And there's an edge there of what is that explosion? Is explosion the right word? Going to the edge of relationship has a particular feel. The feel of the edge is a feeling of approaching the unknown, sort of delicately tiptoeing into waters that don't feel exactly safe, but they aren't unsafe. They're going to the end of the known universe and not leaping off the edge of the world, and not running away, but just seeing what that edge is, what that place is that we can't go any further. And Dan pointed out, or we all pointed out, I forget which, last week, that we call that stuckness. That's where it's stuck. But it isn't stuck when we think of that as an edge. It may be a healing edge. It may be a growing edge. It may be an edge of more closeness, or an edge of what needs to happen in a relationship. It's an edge that most good writing and movies and poems are written about, that feeling of something new, a new potential that we're just now sensing. the experience of falling in love is like that. It's like, oh, what could be here? And how do I step here? There's a kind of excitement about it. And the excitement could be even when you're brokenhearted, or even when you're fed up, or even when you're bored out of your mind with some relational situation. When you go to the edge, there's this little bit of excitement and a kind of tentative hopefulness, like, oh, I could find something. I could know something more. And if it doesn't change it with this person, it could change it in me, and then that will change a dynamic, and that will change something in the world. It's a feeling, shall I say, a feeling, a felt sense, an experience that doesn't depend on the other person or the group or the whatever it is, because it's something where you're sensing into possibilities and knowings of dynamics and a relational field that's vast, and it doesn't all hinge on the other person doing this or that. But the feeling of the edge may be the feeling of, I need the other person to do this or that. But then when we go to the edge, oh, I need them to do this and that. And what would it be like in my body if they did do this and that? And how would they do it? And then you're right at that edge where it doesn't depend on them actually doing it anymore, because it's in the larger realm. So I just want to hear whatever you have there about that intimate edge. And then I'll do a little attunement with us about finding some intimate edge that we want to explore. And then we'll have our breakout rooms, and we'll see, we'll have each person be able to share something about that. But let me hear first just what comes to you about all these things that I've said so far, this territory that I've marked out. We need a breath first, right? Especially with this subject. Relational edges is one of the most difficult, tender, potentially exciting subjects for all of us, I think.
Something just came up for me. Can you hear me?
Oh, yes.
Okay.
Yes.
Something just came up for me. I have been practicing working with a bias that I have about a particular, I don't know how to say it, group of people or a behavior, however you want to put it. Something about a particular group. So I've been working with my bias, and one of the things that comes up that's helped is when you can pause, when I can pause and breathe, and it's about taking in the more, not just that aspect that sends you whatever.
Yes,
sends you off. But when I pause, what I realize is I take in more. Like, wait a minute, what else is there about, what's the whole of this person? You're just looking at one piece. And it's really helped. Thank you.
Oh, thank you, June. That that's something that I had written in my notes and didn't say, and so I'm so glad you said it. That's how this group has matured in a year, almost a year that we've been together, and we're all working together now. It's so wonderful. That this edge, we can sense the more of the person. It also may be the more of the situation. It may be also the more of a dynamic. There's much in that sense of this more, and the more is this larger realm that we're tapping into. Even the more, of the context, like the context of all of us being imprisoned by COVID for almost a year. The more of family dynamics, the more, I mean, there's so many of the more of the political situation, the more of so much of the more, there's so much more, but the more of the person, the bigger the person or the group, the more of the behavior that we don't like. I just want to say also, if I can put one more thing in here, we're not only talking about the intimate edge of experience that we are in conflict with or want to flee from or want to fight. We're also talking about the intimate edge of a wonderfulness, of what we want to be closer to, of what inspires us, of things that we can't say to people that we would want to say that are positive, loving things. So it's both. It's I don't like to divide things up into negative and positive, and we don't want to do that. But to say it's not only the problem situations, this intimate edge, but the more has lots in it.
So let me say, when we're stuck and like if somebody is pouring out and blaming us and angry and we're just receiving it. And the question is how, that edge of, sometimes I just tend to freeze. I don't know what to do. Yeah, I'll just stop there for a second.
Yes. Well, I think that edge is the edge where we're not fighting, fleeing, or freezing. And there is this going to the edge is just being there and saying and being curious, being interested. But curious is a lousy word for what we talk about in focusing. When Dan said, what would you want this word to mean? I would want the word curious to be not a disimpassioned scientific curiosity, but a curious like, oh, the future depends on this. What is this? How can I know this? Sort of like the feeling of right before dawn, walking on the path, and there's just a tiny glimmer of light. And you're tentatively walking there saying, what is this territory I'm in? Where can I step? Where can't I step? Maybe we can stand still without freezing and just knowing that the quote curiosity has everything to do with the possibilities there. Not going to any conclusions like this person is a blah blah or this situation is blah blah or any conclusions or I better get the hell out of here, which of course we're going to think all those things. It's not that we won't think them. But then after we think them, then we can take a breath and say, oh, what is this? What is this? Does that help, Melinda?
I think it's a whole process because, it's lifelong learning, isn't this?
It's a whole process, and it can be just a moment in a breath. It can be both. That moment, that breath of saying, oh, what is this?
And I think for me, it's also recognizing what do I need in this moment too, in terms of self-care.
Well, that's all in there.
Okay.
Right? The what is this is the what I need. I need to know what this is,
Mm-hmm.
right? What do I need? And we may ask it that way. What do I need? What is this for me? And we'll have that in the attunement later too. What is this, and what is this for me? How does it touch me? What do I need here?
Mm-hmm.
So an example that I can think of is when I get triggered, or when you're triggered.
Right.
And it's taking in more of the information of what's going on for me, but also what might be going on out there, taking in more information rather than just the gut reaction. That's
Right. Yes. There's that we have to go steps, Linda, before we get to the edge. You may have to go through your gut reaction. You may have to go through your own pouring out. You may have to go through lots of different feelings before we get to that edge where we can stop and say, oh, this is the crux of it. This is the spot. This is where it gets me. And again,
thank you for saying that, because I think that there's the expectation that we can just go there without having those reactions. So I think that's a really important point that you just made. Thank you.
and you helped me make it, right? You helped me articulate that. Yeah, we want to underscore that we need to go through lots of reactions before we can respond. We want to respond, not react, but we have to go through our reactions. And then the trick, we're finding this out in our community empowerment group. The trick is to go through our reactions in a safe way that doesn't blow everything up before we get to the edge, right?
Yeah, there's something about like the trigger can be very contracting.
Mm.
To sit, to pause at the edge requires some kind of stretching or allowing or a spaciousness within us. And getting there, with a contracted something and then that allowing.
Yes, yes, yes.
In a deep breath.
Yes, yes.
And that requires some real action or something on my part for me to get there. Some kind of allowing.
Allowing, yes. Yes, yes. I can't see who's speaking there. Maria. Maria, right?
Yes.
Thank you, Maria. The letters are just a tiny bit too small for me to see. And I want to know that you said that that step before we can get to the edge of allowing, and we often talk about the pause and the breath and the physical letting go. Say, oh, let me just be here now before we can get there.
Yeah, that even made me feel teary when you said that physical letting go.
Yeah.
Thank you.
And your word allowing is a very good one. When we think about what Jean says about it has to come, we can't figure it out. We can't figure out the other person, we can't figure out ourselves, and we can't figure out the us, this us that is there right in that moment, this intimate edge of us. We can't figure it out. It has to come, and then we have to allow it to come. And that's much easier said than done. I mean, when you're triggered, or you're in love, or you're scared, or you're pissed off. The allowing is the hard thing, the letting it come, the breathing, the self-soothing. These comments are wonderful.
What comes to me, hi Lynn, hi everybody, it's Sophie.
Sophie.
What comes to me is it's actually a very hopeful way of being, because what I feel, what I sense is potential with this edge of relational edge, any edge, but a safe kind of way. Like what you were saying, it's safe, it's unknown, but it's safe.
Mm-hmm.
Or we make it safe,
Mm-hmm.
that we can walk on that edge, or come to that edge, or be on that edge. Sometimes we walk for a while on the edge.
Yeah, it takes us time sometimes.
But there is potential for so much when with this hopeful process. It's a very hopeful process.
Yes. Jean says that, I quote all the time, and I'll just quote it again. Every human experience has an implicit, inherent forward movement in it, inherent in it. So there's that hopefulness. There's also a kind of aliveness to the edge. A psychoanalyst I know talks about being safe, but not too safe. It's safe, but there's that feeling of, oh, anything could happen here if I allow this.
Thank
It's
you.
unpredictable. It's allowing the unpredictable, isn't it? I mean, we want things to be predictable, even bad things. Like, I know if I share this, I'm going to get clobbered. And then we want the predictability of getting clobbered, as some part of us. We want predictability, and going to the edge is sort of letting go of the predictable and being open to surprise. What else could there be?
Letting go perhaps of the comfortable, right? Being willing to
That's right.
be comfortable.
That's right. And I guess you have to get comfortable enough to let go of the comfortable, with the breathing and the allowing and when Maria was speaking, I had this image, and I've seen images like this. We should put one up, of just sitting on a cliff at the edge of a horizon, with vast water and mountains, and just sitting there. We're not going to dive into that water, and we're not going to run away. We're just sitting there contemplating this whole scene.
Lynn, I can't resist saying, my son, who's about 37 now, when he was about 9, we went to the Grand Canyon and we were walking around, And all of a sudden I couldn't find him. I turned around. He literally was sitting on the edge
Oh my
of
God.
a Grand Canyon way up there. He was sitting on the edge. And I almost lost my mind. But of course, I stopped to take a picture, and I love it.
June, send us the picture. That will be
I'm gonna send it to you because it's a riot. This kid's sitting on the edge of the Grand Canyon, right?
we'll put it on the website.
When I get home, Lynn. Okay.
This is Brigitte bowing in. The last exchange made me think about going beyond duality. That means not, I have a tendency not wanting to go to the uncomfortable. And yesterday I had a meeting and I had to wait 15 minutes and I decided to go into my jaw. My upper jaw was so tense. I said, what's going on? I have 15 minutes. I cannot do anything else. And what I discovered is that it's the stress that I have about what's going on in the world, and I cannot do anything. And I had to embrace that. So there was a 15 minutes pause, and I decided that, well, I have nothing else to do. So I felt that there was also an intention behind the curiosity and also a sense of safety. I have nothing to lose. And also there is an element of faith for me. If I do focusing for a few years, if I have done that, is because I know the process is working. It's working with so-called positive feelings, and it's working with negative, so-called negative feelings. And I can change a neutral into positive if I want. So the element of faith and the intention and the curiosity and and knowing that's more, it's very juicy for me.
Yes, juicy.
Yeah, so bowing out.
Yes, yes, yes. That's very inspiring. Next time I have to wait and I'm impatient and antsy, I'm going to do what you did, and I'm going to go to the edge of my relationship with the world. I love that we can go to the intimate edge of our relationship with the world. And what is that now? I mean, the world is so vast, right? But what is that edge right now, that point of contact, that us of me and the world? What a wonderful way to use that 15 minutes.
Hi, can I say something?
I knew you were going to say something, Noor.
Really?
Yes, yes. My intimate edge. I felt you were going to say something in that moment.
There's something about what I'm reflecting about what you said earlier around a felt sense does not depend on the other person. And it's more sensing into the vast relational field. And it makes me think of like my relationship to the closest people to me, and how sometimes I like, being in that place of wanting something from the other person and not getting it. And it feels like, sitting with that is, it's really interesting because I'm thinking of my relationship with my husband, and just like reflecting on that felt sense does not depend on the other person.
Yes, yes, yes.
Yeah.
I think I certainly know exactly what you're talking about. How many of you have experienced that, where you feel like you need something from this other person, and it feels like everything depends on the other person? And of course, it isn't that you can do anything, you can do anything yourself, because there is no self-enclosed self, entity self. But as we go to that edge, that relational edge, we're not alone. It's not just us. It's not just me and myself. It's me and myself. That's the big relational self. And I am an us. And so when I go to the edge, the us changes. I'm putting something else, some other kind of energy in there that changes the whole relational field and is not dependent on the other person or other people. Let's say I want a group of people to be different than they are. It doesn't change. I don't need them to change in order for something new to happen.
Yeah, do not need them to change in order for something to happen. Yeah.
Something new to happen, right? There'll be, at that edge, there'll be a sense of a forward movement, a step. And that step is a step of that comes to you that doesn't depend on the outcome. It has the feel of this is the forward movement. And it might just be a step of looking at something more closely.
It feels like, hi, this is Steph. It feels like utilizing creative energy. When I think of it, it's like creativity.
Mm-hmm.
When I think of it that way, it sort of opens up a whole nother field for me.
Yes, absolutely. It's that focusing is a creative process. It's interesting because in Jane's philosophy, there's a kind of understanding that when we create, it's not creating something out of nothing, but it's the creating and finding are the same thing. We're finding something that the raw materials are already there, but it wasn't there. We're creating it and finding it at the same time. And that process of creating and finding, and it has to come, and we're creating it. It's a very mysterious, wonderful process. It's an imaginative process. Someone said that every pathology is a failure of imagination. And that edge is the place where we go, that edge of imagination. We can imagine a bigger, a more. And a more in us. Okay, are we ready to have our attunement? I think we may be. Anybody have any last things they want to say? You'll have a chance also after we come back. Let's take a deep breath. Sit on the on the edge of our awareness here. Maybe we can sit back on our chairs and sit on the edge of our awareness, or sit on the edge of our chairs. We want to go to that special place that Jean calls the edge of awareness. See if there is a relational situation that wants our attention. Many of us have just thought of them. It could be with a person, it could be with a group, it could be with a movement, it could be with a society, it could be with the world, it could be with ourselves. And we want to gently ask, how is this? We don't want to ask what's wrong or anything like that. We want to say, what is it here? How is this relational place right now? And see if there's a word or an image that comes that says how it is. How it is. Is it tangled? Is it explosive? Is it pregnant with meaning? Is it tender? Is it precarious? Find a word or an image that says how it is. And if you want to, you might write it down. And now ask a little more specifically, what am I up against here? What is it for me? What am I struggling with? I mean, the situation may be blah, 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 but what is it for me? What is that particular challenge for me? What is the growing edge or the healing edge or the meeting edge? Sometimes we say, well, anybody would feel this and this and this. But you're not anybody. What is it for you? Where does it grab you? What does it bring up for you? And again, you may have a word or image for that. And now I'm going to ask you something, a little turn here, and let's see what it does. If you ask instead of, or as well as, what am I up against? What are we up against? And that we can be you and the other, you and the world, you and the situation. What are we up against. And see if you feel a little shift there when you go from I, and then you have the more of the we. And write that down if you want to. And then, what is needed here? And when we ask that, don't limit yourself to what can be. Your imagination can't be caged. We say, what is needed? Let whatever comes in your body be honored. It may be totally unrealistic. We don't care about that right now. What is needed here? And that's a little different than what do I need? What do I need is very, very important. We want to ask that also. But what is needed here for this relational edge? And then lastly, is there a little step? It may not be one that you want to take or can take. Let's see if something emerges that would be a little step. It might be a step of knowing more, or it might be a step of approaching, or it might be a step of stepping back, or it might be, we're not going to limit it. Forward movement comes in little tiny steps. And if it feels like a too much, make a tinier step. And you don't even have to take the step. We're just imagining the step. Imagining it, we're putting that step into the universe, into the known universe. And then there's going to be something different, having that little step in the known universe. When you're ready, take a breath. Welcome back. Welcome back to this us. And now we're going to be in our breakout rooms. And if anybody has to leave, we want you to stay, but if you have to leave, this is the time to leave. And we'll be in breakout rooms of 4.